Survivor was a huge hit from the start, but because the show aired on television well after the game ended, producer Mark Burnett faced a survival challenge of his own. How to keep the winner's identity secret from the public.
Joe, welcome back.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be back with you.
Good to have you here. We talked about entertainment yesterday. We talked about I Love Lucy and Dick Van Dyke. Let's stick with the political theme here. You think the election night of 2000 was another seminal moment in television?
Well, it was the election that didn't elect a president, and you guys know that better than anybody else. I mean, that pre-election eve prediction of Tim Russert's right here with you. It's the only one that held up.
You think that's going to change the way television covers elections from now on?
Oh, I think it has to. I think the notion of being first is antiquated. That's a throwback to the print age. Nowadays, if you guys have a prediction, the other networks are going to be on it just as fast.
So many great stories. And your victory, in fact, again, another emotional victory in Martinsville in 2005. I guess it was, what, lap 48 you had to pit, and when you came out, you found yourself 3 laps down, and yet you came back and lapped everybody 3 times.
Well, you know, we had one of those cars that was just on rails, is the way we like to put it.
At 8:46 came news that an airplane had crashed into one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. Here's Walter Cronkite.
Reporters and TV networks shared a sobering sense of purpose.
The only time that Archie ever stepped up was when Peyton was 11 years old, and he lost his first basketball game, and the coach dressed him down, said, "You guys weren't mentally prepared." Peyton shot back, but Archie couldn't hear what he had said, and it wasn't until he was driving Peyton home, and he said, "Hey, by the way, what'd you say to the coach?" And he said, "Well, I told him that we didn't win because he didn't know what he was doing." And Archie slammed on the brakes, did a U-turn, came back, made Peyton apologize to his coach, but that was the only time he really pushed him. So President Carter vowed to retaliate by boycotting the Summer Games in Moscow. So when the U.S. hockey team squared off against the Soviet Union on February 22nd, 1980, their icy battle gave new meaning to the term Cold War. Here with the story is Bob Costas.
A funny thing happened to the Soviets on their way to the victory stand.
There's Something About Mary showed how a comedy can be both tasteless and heartwarming at the same time.
Joe Garner, good morning. Welcome back. That is an
morning,
unforgettable scene. Spielberg says he's made better movies, but perhaps none more personal than E.T., which is a little unusual when you consider Schindler's List.
Yeah, but I think it was the universal theme of E.T. that touched all of us, that innocence versus authority. I think that's why it struck us. Schindler's List, he says, is his most significant, but certainly his most personal is E.T. The Chicago Cubs just taunted them mercilessly, and especially Babe Ruth. And when he stood there at the top of the 5th inning and held that bat on his shoulder and just sort of held his fingers out, counting off the balls and the strikes, and then pointing out towards center field as if to say, "All right, now I've got you." Professional comics have been making fun of leaders since the days of the kings and court jesters. Of course, back then when you died on stage, you really died. But making fun of powerful politicians is still a tricky business. Jon Stewart's success with The Daily Show is the latest fusion of comedy and politics. For many fans, his parody of a nightly newscast has become a genuine source for news.
The Abu Ghraib.
I know that going to war in the Middle East makes the names a lot tougher. I understand that.
The guy who decided to put Heidi on and not keep the game real quickly never got fired.
No, he did not. In fact, he came back and he wound up directing the NBC Nightly News a year later.
Joe Garner, great to have you here.
Thanks,
We're back right after this.